this book, After 9/11 Truth, the nice little subtitle, The Death Star in Ashes, Humanity Rises. All right, and the whole idea of this book, aside from being a bit of a tribute to, and we'll cover that in a minute, but what I want to do is like, this is mainly addressed really to the truth people, okay? And I'm assuming most of you are at least very skeptical of the government's official story of 9/11, I'll put it that way. And so I think most of the people in the liberty movement in general are also inclined to be in the truth movement in general. So that's kind of where I'm going. And what I want to say with respect, so I'm sort of addressing my book, at least initially, to the people in the truth movement, the 9/11 truth movement, to do more toward moving it forward. You know, it's very easy to sit around and you know, preach to the converted or talk about the latest video. There's so much information now. There's so much. It's just an avalanche of evidence and different points of view. But there's kind of like a standard point of view coming forward, and I'm more or less of that, of the architects and engineers for 9/11 truth persuasion. I'm a member and a signatory, and I basically endorse their approach with certain disclaimers, okay? But we're kind of along the line of having a legitimate, they won't say grand jury, but I'll say grand jury, but a fully empowered grand jury, a proper grand jury that can investigate and bring indictments of legitimate suspects. Now, you know, so that's and they'll say, well, we need a new investigation. Well, which with subpoena power, and that's basically the same thing, except they're just not being upfront about the fact that this is in American jurisprudence or Anglo jurisprudence, that's a grand jury. Anyway, so the idea, okay, the book proceeds. All right, this is just it's kind of like I'm building a new model. All right, so that's the Buckminster Fuller quote here. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, you build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. Now, this is my tribute to part of this, and one of the particular ones. A lot of people don't know that the people who suffered some of the worst effects, aside from the immediate victims of the 9/11 attacks, were the first responders. I mean, they were basically inhaling all this asbestos that was in the World Trade Centers that was holding up Larry Silverstein from doing anything with that property. So he basically, well, you could argue this was just an asbestos removal project for him. But a lot of people suffered, and this is my tribute to one of them, David Miller, and who is no longer with us, but he perished from lung cancer from the, I believe it's probably from the asbestos. So, and this comes from one of the truth works that I have from Massimo Mazzucco called A New Pearl Harbor. And so he covers this. It's very touching. And then there's just people that have just been destroyed, not to mention all the people in wars who have been displaced or killed or tortured. You know, so 9/11 has been the pretext for just innumerable crimes against humanity. So the next, the book proceeds. I just kind of have to take a 12-step model. It's a very short book, you know, but it's pretty dense. And I'm just going to go through. One thing I do want to say is that I believe that our target, in a sense, our secondary target, but kind of the primary target for me, are people who are inclined to be truthers, okay? And this is kind of like, okay, my book and my system gives us something to do, and it's literary in nature. It's letter in the sense of message writing with a measurable tool of success. But fundamentally, our target, our secondary target, are people in our peer groups who are deniers, and almost everyone, you know, most of us know a lot of people. I mean, we're a distinct minority in the quote-unquote respectable establishment community who are advocates of the truth. And so, but we have a lot of people for one reason or another, and I think these are people that are susceptible to being turned, because it's really a case of like the emperor's new clothes. You know, we're trying to get someone else to be the second little boy. You know, we're the little boy, say, hey, you know, this guy's not wearing anything, and it's totally illegitimate, and everyone else is afraid, except then the second little boy comes along and says, oh yeah, and then pretty soon everybody says, okay, and then you delegitimize power, and you basically restore your own power. So that's kind of like my advance here. Now, you need to have a bit of a vision as to where you're going. My concept of a billion points of light, which I borrowed from one of the major, can you say asshole of history, was it George Bush or George Bush Jr.? You know, I mean, it was like he came up with a million points of light, and this is, you know, to sort of like say, okay, we need more volunteers, right? Well, this is kind of billion points of light, which is basically we're distributed power, we're all self-starters, we're all, you know, creating our own, you know, with our own imagination, we're creating our own world, our new paradigm, a free society. So, you know, the sequence begins as shown with justice for the perpetrators and the victims, and this is a healing process. It also then extends its way to other high crime assaults that are most of them are related to the 9/11 attacks, and then we do have justice, and then we really achieve this billion points of light society. It's consistent. My advocacy, my philosophy is essentially consistent with the Thrive movement, so I recommend everyone to watch the Thrive video, where there's no formal connection.
We watched that here.
Have you seen it?
Ago, yeah.
Okay, well it's a wonderful, positive, and constructive method of looking at the world. This is where I start with the actual, in chapter 2, I just kind of summarize or put a digest together of about 12 what I call truth works. These are books or videos, typically. There's a paper or two in here that are well known in the movement. And by no means is this an exhaustive list, but I believe that any list that may come out in the year or two will include most of these works. And there are 3 or 4 that are really just essentials. And I kind of summarize these, and this is kind of where we are. The movement, the truth movement, the 9/11 truth movement is already out there. These have been produced. These are brilliant. These are fabulous, spectacular, insightful. They just nail the whole process. They show without doubt that the government story is a lie, and that 9/11 was an inside job. So what's holding us back? So what I'm saying is we have the truth. We're already there. We're pretty close to actually what we're really looking at is a mop-up situation, cleaning things up. So hold on, I'm just going to get my coffee. So you know we're on the threshold of really, in terms of logic and philosophy and forensics and science and engineering and architecture, we have the truth. So the question is, why isn't that a general, why isn't that general, not emperor's naked, why don't the people want to look, okay? Well, there are a lot of reasons for that. It gets back into, and I devote a slight amount of time, but briefly, because it's a very brief book, into kind of the sources of modern mind control, which the really sophisticated stuff started about 100 years ago with the Fed and all of that, you know. So the really sophisticated stuff started around World War I, and it's only gotten more and more intense, you know, with widescreen TV, you know, just 24/7 glitter, flicker, bang, bang, I call it, you know. We're just it's the standard means of the perceptual emotional method of consciousness is being exploited by those behind the scenes. So, and it's very sophisticated. I wrote a book called The Barrier Cloud, which kind of goes into the depths of the nature of that, of who those people are, and kind of like why humanity is like susceptible to some extent. But we do have an opportunity to break that barrier cloud by something called satyagraha. Now, Barbara Honegger, am I keeping up? No, sorry. Okay, Barbara Honegger. This would be my chapter 4. Who produced this video, or was the author, the actor of the video, the narrator of Behind the Smoke Curtain. She said she's the one that I learned the concept of satyagraha. Satyagraha was a term coined by Mahatma Gandhi, oddly enough, on September 11th, 1901, so 100 years before the crime of the century. So, and so she says to confront an evil of this magnitude. Now she's referring to the evil of 9/11, of those who committed this act. Facts alone are not enough. The 9/11 truth movement is and must be the heart of a growing global truth force. Satyagraha, which was this goes to that's the definition of the term by Mahatma Gandhi. Now, and the more I really wrapped my fingers around that and did some thinking about that, I saw that satyagraha, the power of satyagraha, deals with this whole concept of moral legitimacy. If you will, satyagraha is Toto pulling back the curtain on the Wizard of Oz, and Dorothy saying, holding the wizard to task, and not saying, the wizard, we don't bother him, but saying, no, we got to deal with that. That's a real problem. So satyagraha that's a fairly simple thing to do. So which goes into this concept that I have of effortless power. Now, this is where I say, and I deal with this a little bit. Again, this is a abbreviation, and my tendency is I try to explain everything, and there's just way too much for me to explain in a simple presentation. So I'm trying to do this with I don't know, images and parables, what have you, but and still kind of give you an idea of what's in the book and why you would find it worthwhile. But there is a now I how many people play golf? Does anybody play golf regularly? All right, we don't have a lot of golfers here. I just happen to fall into it. And the gravity golf analogy is, well, there's a man who came along, his name is David Lee, and he basically argues that the golf swing is basically being taught incorrectly. That any amount of force that you apply from your internal being, analogous to just being compulsive or reactive in your mind, is affecting it affects a very delicate operation, namely the the free flow, your authentic swing. So the idea is to tap into natural forces effortlessly. But what he means is you make the effort, but it's tension free and force free. So just as we advocate the non-aggression principle in our social society, at least normal people do, we also need to kind of like apply that in our own articulation of what we believe, our own lives, our own minds. So if there's force and tension and tightness in what we do, then that's probably a good indication that we need to kind of like free ourselves up. And that's so there's power in there, but we need to tap our own power. And then I have a chapter on on more conventional success systems. Napoleon Hill. This is from Peter McWilliams. He wrote a book called "You Can't Afford the Luxury of a Negative Thought." But basically, a success system is simply a process of achieving goals by writing them down, dreams, goals, plans, actions. And you're much more likely to be successful if you have a success system. So I've kind of incorporated that into my book, which has obviously has a spin-off benefit, not just from the prosecution of the 9/11 truth cause. All right, now I'm going to get back. I'm going to get into my system. My system is, I call it the Share It Forward system. The actual name of my system is the Truth Letter Closure Campaign. What we are proposing, and this is actually in the book jacket, is the problem that we have with the people we deal with in our peer groups who are deniers. They're happy with the conventional wisdom and they don't really want to look too deep. Is they won't look. They won't look. And once anyone genuinely looks at any of these truth works or any of these, they got the right one up yet. At any of these videos or books, what have you, arguments, they'll see the truth, and then that imposes certain responsibility on them to do something, right? And a lot of people it's not that it's not like they can't figure it out. It's just they just don't want to know. They kind of know there's a 900-pound gorilla over there, but they're not going to look for it. They're not going to bother dealing with it because it's a 900-pound gorilla, and so like everybody, we're going to need help with that. So that's why they resist it, and that's kind of like where I'm coming in. So my letter writing campaign, and when I say letter, email, message, what have you, consists of three basic processes. First, you build lists. Okay, that's covered in the book too, and it'll be covered on the website. But you build lists, you read or review. Okay, then your letter. Okay, then you write letters. And you send them, and your letter basically encourages your contact, your target, to read or view one truth work, just one, of the list, of 12. Then, on the assumption, and 90% of the people who actually do read or view one truth work are convinced. Okay, it's not really rocket science. You read experts speak out, or you watch experts speak out, you can't come to any other conclusion but that certainly World Trade Center 7 was demolished by controlled demolition. You can't really come, or that it certainly wasn't brought down by an airplane. All right, and so you once you read the works, and that certainly goes double for several of these other works that cover the whole gamut of what the official story of 9/11 is. So you encourage them to read or review at least one work. Then you encourage, okay, and then on the assumption okay, this is the key that I came up with is, I came up with a questionnaire, I'm gonna come back to that. You want them to publicly declare in one manner or another, write a letter to the editor, send a note to their congressman or their legislator to join our cause, to call the media, what have you, okay? And then, then the other part, this is the questionnaire. And actually, that should probably be number 2. Fill out the questionnaire, return it to the sender. That would be you. And again, I'll talk about that very shortly. Success starts with a list. I'm not going to dwell on this, except to say I have in mind an entire. My system has kind of like categories of contacts. I call them friends, family, huckleberries, and notables. And everybody knows what friends and family and notables are. Well, everyone knows what friends and family are. Huckleberries are just esteemed acquaintances. My analogy would be the people that I know in my golf league. Okay, they're not inclined to really be politically active, but they're people I see, and they're generally good people. The notables, this is just more of to deal with people in public view, in a legislative or official capacity, or perhaps a that's my camera.
Oh,
That's all
sorry.
right.
I'm sorry. I said over here.
There you go, that's good.
Is that hitting my?
Yeah.
I didn't mean to mess with your camera.
That's all right. It's
I just don't like my picture taken.
So anyway, we make lists, and again, it's simple. And the side benefit of that is a lot of us have wanted to get our address lists organized anyway. So it has a spin-off value there. Now the next step is actually, messages to doorsteps, to cyber doorsteps, and we have to realize that virtually every one of us, virtually every one of us, at one time believed the official lies. I don't know when I came to the truth. I think it was 2005. Although my initial response was Mossad did it, and it's turning out that's pretty close. That may be pretty close to the truth. but I did follow the line until about 2005, and I saw a video from some auspices, conservative, what have you, that said, "Where's the plane?" I mean, it was the first time anybody had ever suggested, "Wait a minute, there's no plane on the Pentagon. There's no plane. There's no evidence of a plane." And so, from that, then I started reading David Ray Griffin, and one thing, led to another. But it's hard to do, because if once you take that step, you're the resident, truther. You're the whack job. You're the nut who doesn't believe the official story. So the problem is that these people are very afraid of losing their whole structure of, because if 9/11 was an inside job, which it certainly was, then that means that huge numbers of individuals, at least, I won't say huge numbers, but I'm just going to say the hierarchy of the government's intelligence, foreign policy, security, and media information establishment is responsible for committing this crime. And that just is like, that's like saying your mom and your dad are evil people. Yeah, right. So that's a tough job. So I keep two letter templates, and here's kind of where I come in, and I'm going to talk about the questionnaire and the website. there's a questionnaire involved in this, and I'm going to show that to you. I'm going to hand these out. I've got plenty of these. This is the questionnaire. It's actually been improved. Why don't you just go ahead and pass them? Don't pass out. It's been improved a little bit, but now, so I have 2 letter templates, and again, the letter templates are something that you know, if you choose to get involved in this project, in this campaign, you know, we'll have groups, okay? That comes a little bit later, because you can do everything that I'm talking about here just by reading my book and figuring it out and going to my website. My website is after911truth.org, okay? And but I'm just trying to give you an overview. I'm not really trying to convince anybody right now. I'm just trying to present the information. Did you get one, Mark? Mm-hmm. Okay. So what we have is like, if this were a standard mail letter, you know, I have like a long form and a short form in the book, and I'm a reasonably good writer, but don't worry about it. The point is that you want to include these, you know, some semblance of the sequence of points in your letters, and they can be short. There's a long form and a short form, but be creative. The main thing is you want to mention the book, okay? Because the book is kind of like part of the system, all right? And then you want to mention the list, because you're really trying to get the person to read or view one work, okay? And then you want them to fill out the questionnaire, you know, or fill out the questionnaire and then read one work. But they're kind of like the process of filling out the questionnaire. Ideally, is they're going to say, okay, I'll fill out the questionnaire, and most people that'll fill out the questionnaire are going to read or view one work or they already have. Some of these letters are going to go to people that agree with you, and so in that case, they'll just be encouraged to step up and participate and reach their own contact field. So anyway, what would be is like you would just the standard letter, and again this will be up on the website. But you know, I was telling Dean and Mark, and I'm 65. You know, we back in the day we learned grammar, and they taught us how to write letters, and you know, it was kind of like you did it like this, and you had inside greetings, and you know, so like most people, I mean, I'm not saying every one of the people in the class, but I'd say like the 50 percentile anyway, would know how to write a letter to a letter to a congressman or what have you. And so that's kind of what I'm proposing is probably my raw model. And then but there are going to be some people you're not going to have their email addresses, you're not going to have their street addresses, so you're going to send them an email message, and then they will respond with an electronic questionnaire, you know, which is also up on the website. But this just gives you an idea, and this, so that I would send this, for example, I have this here to the chairman of the Department of Mechanical Engineering at Wayne State University, where I attended. Okay, and you know, then I go through my standard letter, which is just as I would do it. I might include something else if it were, you know, being as this is like peculiar to my own experience and identify with that person. But you know, we need people in authority to make this step. The most important, to make this fast. This has to be fast. So I would just put this in an envelope, you know, mail it to them, include this self-stamped questionnaire. Again, you get this, you can write these off, and as time goes on, my website's going to have, or our website is going to have supplies. We're going to, you know, sell these, you know. And this is kind of like going to be more of a uniform thing. You know, we don't want to deviate too much, because this is our measurement of measurement of success. How many of these did you get? So when we go to a meeting, you say, well, how many did you get out? How many did you get responded? How many declared that they would, read or view one of these works, and move forward? Which gets back to the. And I'm going to pass this around, so you can see what it would look like. And so this is kind of getting into the whole motivational part. I'm almost done. Kindred Souls in Motion. Back in the old days of motivational leadership, there was a guy named Napoleon Hill in the 30s. And he came up with a book called Think and Grow Rich, Depression Era. And it was focused on sales. That was before network marketing was created, I think. Or it was in its infancy anyway. But he had something called mastermind groups. And these are mainly, you get together and you don't talk about, ball games or the weather, well, you do. I mean, there's small talk, but the main point of your getting together is to motivate yourself, to identify things that are holding you back, to identify where you are, how well you're reaching your goals, your successes. And so what I'm proposing is to set in motion these mastermind groups, which I'm going to call points of light groups, in keeping with my billion points of light concept, my worldview, that's where we're striving for. And then I haven't worked out the framework of that entirely, but it's just going to be positive and motivational, not a lot of he said, she said, or not a lot of the latest video, the latest book, although there'll be time for that. The main point is to motivate people to continue to move forward, to spread the word. Think of old time religion. Think of evangelism. Christianity. I mean, the evangelistic Christianity. They're successful because they're all about spreading the word. Okay, sharing the good news, and that's what you have to do. So the other thing, and finally here, is this Truth Letter campaign and this whole process identified in here. It actually provides a model for two things. One thing is for other causes. This approach that I'm taking to the truth of 9/11 is also relevant to a lot of related, I call them high crime assaults. Okay, high crime assaults of the junta, the global elites, whatever you want to call them, but the banksters, what have you. These people have in place an agenda of world domination. We've seen Thrive, and these particular crimes are all susceptible to the same process of exposure that we're bringing to the 9/11 truth movement. So what I'm saying is I think 9/11 is such an arrogant overstep of power that they don't realize how susceptible they are to a counterattack. So they're extremely vulnerable because of 9/11, and we owe it to the victims. We owe it to the victims of the day, the victims of following that, and to ourselves to bring them to justice. And we bring them to justice. We can bring the other people to justice, and then we'll have, with this type of an approach, we'll kind of have a nice little motivational model that works. Now this is very literary, and what I'm looking at downstream in the context of kind of the Libertarian Party or the Liberty Movement in general is something I call Good Neighbor Libertarian, which is more focused on grassroots attachment to public official bodies, and that's more activist in the sense, or building alternatives, than just writing letters. But you first, in any of these cases, you still have to build that type of legitimacy. Well, you have to delegitimize the attacking power, because that's what they're relying on. The reason why they are successful why the truth has not gotten through is they've convinced people that they're authentic, that they're real, that they're moral, and that you know they're in charge, and that they're legitimate. Once you delegitimize them with satyagraha, then it's all over, and then the rest of it's fairly straightforward. So I have a couple of appendices. Sorry, that graphic is really interesting, and that's a bigger view when you go into the book that shows kind of my concept of the 9/11 big lie as a linchpin, and that's like a wheel at the bottom. And so when you knock out that linchpin, this rod, I call it the pod rod, the pod rod of false moral legitimacy, falls right through the hole. Okay, when you take out the linchpin, and then all these items held up by paper clips, and I include the money monopoly. You know, I'm going to just go through them because I know I'm in a sympathetic audience. The money monopoly, you know, take over the money system, the resulting massive confiscation of wealth, the credit domination, and the war-making machinery that it feeds, the atmospheric spraying, toxic skies. It's obviously a depopulation agenda. The enforcer crimes, the torture, the war crimes, the war on drugs, the atrocity of the various atrocities that are going on that we're not aware of, staged massacres, blanket surveillance, TSA, DHS, NDAA, the goons on loose in Occupy America, Gulag medicine, the genocidal AMA, the Obamacare. We have all these this vaccination attacks. And we have radio wave pollution with smart, quote unquote, smart meters, actually death meters. Yeah, and food fouling with GMOs, CAFOs, and so forth, limiting our choices in foods and drugs. Just citizen disarmament, you know, attacks on firearms, ownership, with again these and attacks on constitutionalists. We have the mind attacks through Common Core, K through 12. Dumbing down even further than it has been, but it's more, the Common Core is just overt collectivization of the mind. You know, this is like, you know, Karl Marx 101, you know, and it's awful. And plus people get dumb. And anyway, so then we get the other, the psychiatric drugs, I mentioned vaccines, you know, all this forced drugging that we're doing to our children. Then we have the information death grip and threats to the internet, which so far we seem to have held them off a bit. And I think that's one reason we can be somewhat hopeful. For now. But again, you know, we need to use the resources we have. I have you go to after911truth.org and you can find what you need to find, and you can sign up. You can just send me your name and I'll get in touch with you. That's really, at this stage, I'm at a very early stage. I'm kind of still in my stage of raising capital, obviously getting my presentation together a little more professionally to move forward. And I want to raise about $4,000 more, mainly to build a website and launch these points of light groups and just basically maybe, you know, get interviews with Alex Jones and people like that to try to build this into legitimate functioning operation where people are actually doing this. You know, I'm going to start doing it very shortly. So the book is up on Amazon. I'll spare you that Appendix B, and we'll end by going to Cowabunga. Snoopy. Does everybody remember Snoopy? You don't remember Snoopy, do you?
I remember Cowabunga.
Okay, Cowabunga. All right, so I'm done. I have books to sell. They're $5. I have other books that I've written that I'll sell, but mainly just open for questions. Any questions?
Does this relate to some of the Tea Party also?
Yeah, I think it does. And, you know, I attend meetings at Campaign for Liberty up in Oakland County, Troy, monthly meetings. They're Tea Party, they're a lot of libertarian, you know, but it's fundamentally a coalition of liberty-minded people in the Republican Party, okay? And, or not really in the Republic, they don't really support Republicans per se. If they had a liberty-minded Democrat, they would support him or her. So yeah, it's related because what I think this can do with this simple articulated method of, I mean, heck, anybody can sit and write a letter, right? I mean, we learned to do that when we were kids, or a lot of us did. So there's going to be some training maybe, but it's a simple letter. It's already been written, so anybody can put a letter in the mail, get a questionnaire back, and talk and watch these videos and read these. That's another step. I mean, a lot of us haven't probably read or viewed the number of truth works that I have, but you know, there are like 4, and I'm going to make it pretty clear as to what I regard as the key ones. I've already done a transcript of like these key videos, so that people can have reference in a literary format, so they can do a keyword search and find out things about, like, well, what happened to the data recorders, you know, things of that nature. So this is going to be a little bit of a research effort here, but fundamentally, I'm really trying to support the people that have done these works. You know, the Barbara Honegers, the Richard Gages, the Monroe Mizuko's, the David Hooper, who's the guy from Grosse Ile who did
Deception.
Anatomy of a Great Deception. Anatomy of a Great Deception. And that's just a wonderful movie for people who want to understand. He made the movie because he was asking questions. At 2011, he started asking questions. And he's like an entrepreneur, filmmaker, has some means, and he just said, wait a minute, that doesn't add up. So but he wasn't getting any support from his family or friends. And in fact, they were resisting him. They were resisting him. And so what he did is he turned around and he made a movie. You know, he has the resources to do that, but it's a wonderful movie. And again, I would advocate that it's not as complete as, say, The New Pearl Harbor by Massimo Mizuko, which I would advocate to anyone who's. But start with the simple ones. You know, start with Anatomy of a Great Deception. Go to Experts Speak Out is really a wonderful. It's actually called something evidence.
Examining the evidence is one of the videos.
Yeah, but the Experts Speak Out is the subtitle. But that's the Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth film, and that's gone through several iterations over their time frame. But yeah, that's an excellent place to start.
I was thinking there's a Netflix availability of 9/11 in plain sight. I don't know what you think of that production.
Oh, okay.
I thought for what it was pretty good. But
Well, yeah, I liked it. I thought that I think that Barbara Honegger's Behind the Smoke Curtain is probably the most, you know, and again, that's been endorsed by people in the Architects and Engineers group. But Behind the Smoke Curtain is really a complete assessment of what happened at the Pentagon, which it appears to be, just as at World Trade Center, it's like the plane, quote unquote, collisions are masks of targeted explosions. So there were people and there were functions that the plotters did not want to come to light, especially at the Pentagon. So there were a number of other explosions that occurred, you know, that didn't have anything to do. Well, the 757, this just didn't happen. It didn't. There was no 757 at the Pentagon. Okay, just that's it. There wasn't there. But there was probably a drone, and then there were all these other secondary explosions.
Well, Barbara Honegger did a good job also of pointing out that there were explosions at the Pentagon and the World Trade Center, number 7, the towers, prior to any of the primary explosions. You know, prior to when the planes that hit the towers and the supposed plane that hit the Pentagon, there were explosions actually taking place before.
Before the official stories timeline, yes,
If
exactly.
everybody forget the first explosion in that, what was it, 93 or 95?
Oh, yeah, the World Trade Center 93.
Yeah, it was the
Yeah, see, if everybody forget that. And then look at the congressional record where the FBI pretty much set it all up.
Oh, yeah, for the World Trade Center 1,
I
yeah.
heard a couple days before 9/11, $2.5 trillion is missing. Well, that part of the Pentagon got wiped out.
Right,
Conveniently, there's nobody there in that spot.
right, that's in behind the smoke curtains.
So many things, my God.
Right, and again, you know how it is. We all, that's kind of why I think we need to focus, and that's why I put this in form of a digest, and everybody can go through these and read those and view those, and then on the website we'll have a forum where people can, speak up and say, well, I think this doesn't belong on the list, or this does, and then we'll just have some kind of structure or whatever. But the main thing is that we need to spread it to the unconverted. Not preach to the choir. Yes.
Essentially, you're encouraging a bunch of people to network, share information, develop a cell group, and
Yeah.
have a cell group network.
Essentially,
Yeah.
points of light group.
Yeah, Brian, on these, on the website here, you made it as easy as possible for people to just take these sample letters, maybe either just copy them or copy an email or print, and then they can basically just sign their own name on the bottom there and send it off.
It's not all together yet, but the
Okay.
website is up. After
Right.
9/11 Truth is up. After 9/11truth.org is up, and it's an indirect link to another my page, but it's like it's fully functional in terms of like being able to take somebody who wants to be on. He wants to be a what do you call it? A participant. In the sense of like they just want to be contacted.
Yeah, well, you're familiar with Downsize DC and how they just, he'll, was it back there or something? He writes a letter there and he says, you can use anything I want. So
Yeah.
If you don't feel like composing anything your own, you just copy and paste, and then
Right.
and then they send it to their website and they put your
Right, and
because
again,
you're on
a lot of
file, it's
that
got all your
ability to
personal
do
information.
something like
And,
Downsize
yeah, it's
does.
like 2 minutes and boom, you're
And
you're off to your
I know,
senator and your congressman.
Right, but mine is a little more, batch oriented than that. It's like, because I'm dealing with people creating their own lists of contacts. We spread from the beginning, and so you create, and you send basically the same letter.
But you have to have
To a number of
different
people.
addresses, you have to have your own.
Yeah,
Contact.
but what you're saying is something I would definitely keep in mind, as time goes on. A lot's going to depend on if I get the investment resource and I get somebody that really knows what he's doing on a website, and I have a couple of people I can contact to do that. But yeah, then there'll be more bells and whistles. But I really want this to be a much more, or a less. I want it to be less electronic or cyberspace related and more down to earth. That's kind of like the more I've thought about it, the more I'm oriented toward to the physical letters as much as I can. I mean, you can push a button on a computer and what does a legislator think of that? Not much.
There's a delete button on his keyboard.
He's got a delete button and he's got assistants that delete, So, but if you send them a letter, and especially to send them a letter with a questionnaire, and the same thing I think works with our friends. If you send them a letter, how many letters do they get, really? And this is like it's not spam, it's not what they call, junk mail, it's not junk mail. It's something, it's kind of like going old style, kind of old school. And then when people get together, they kind of like focus on, well, how many questionnaires did you get responded to? And I'm not going to say, no, you don't do electronic, because lots of times you don't have their address.
Yeah, I'm just told a phone call for the best. You're
Or a
actually
phone
getting an
call?
instantaneous response.
But the phone call doesn't have an associated questionnaire.
No.
Questionnaire is a key part of this system as I envision it.
Yeah, if you can follow up with a letter or something.
Because that's the closing of the deal. It's kind of like handing them a Bible, or not a Bible, but what do you have, prayer book or whatever. You hand them something, a devotional, and then you say,
Certified letter.
check it out, if it works for you, you know.
Well, if the thing comes back, then you know that you got.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a
you got
measure of
proof on it.
success.
If it doesn't come back, then it's like, well, you gotta try.
But you know, you can even say, well, I sent out this many, you know, I mean, that's something you can share in your motivational meetings. And these aren't gonna be hard case type meetings, they're gonna be friendly meetings. But it's just, we're gonna try to focus on kind of like doing things in kind of like coordinated fashion. But there's a lot of
You said
individuality.
This was Wayne State University people feeling that it didn't happen, 911 didn't
Well,
happen.
no, that, I went to Wayne State, okay? So, I mean, I went to engineering school.
Right.
And, in fact, I graduated. So I have like an in with, say, the dean of engineering. I might even know him. He might have even taught me back then, who knows? But I don't know who he is offhand. But he would be a good person for me to reach, because he's a person, or she is a person of stature, a person of influence. So we want to reach people of influence as a priority, because once they get turned, you know, it's like, who's going to deny, if that little boy says the emperor's naked, you know, emperor's naked, and everybody goes along. See, we're almost at the tipping point where everybody's going to know that the official story is crap, and we got to start bringing suspects in for indictment.
That's the key word, tipping point, because then it will become fashionable.
Well, that's right. That's right.
Now, you're familiar with what happened to Stephen E. Jones from Brigham Young University, PhD, and how he was ostracized. And I've actually heard from some people, they say, oh, he didn't have his, and I just got it on, I pulled it up on WikiLeaks yesterday, and apparently they have redone that. But there was probably a CIA plot to deface this guy. And so they went through all of the, people were looking up the information. We got the chair of the State Libertarian Party that is apparently believing this crap. And it's like, so I sent her this thing with the latest on WikiLeaks to say that, Stephen Jones really is a, PhD, highly regarded in his field, and validated that a lot of this stuff